Once upon a time, in a peaceful little village, there lived an old woman who was known for her kindness, wisdom, and constant cheerfulness. Whether it was sunny or rainy, whether life was easy or difficult, she always carried a smile on her face. The villagers loved her dearly. They would often come to her for advice, to confide in her, or simply to hear her gentle words. Everyone was amazed by her endless positive energy. She never complained or appeared sad. One day, a young man from the village came and asked her, "Grandma, why are you always so happy? No matter what happens, I've never seen you upset. Don't you ever feel down?" The old woman smiled kindly and replied, "My dear, life always has its ups and downs. There are good days and bad days. But I've learned that happiness doesn't come from what happens around us, it comes from within." Hearing this, the young man grew even more curious. He asked, "You say happiness comes from within, but how can we stay joyful when sad or bad things happen?" The old woman nodded gently and began telling a story from her own life. "When I was younger, I had a small family. Though we weren't wealthy, my husband and children and I lived happily together. But one day, my husband fell seriously ill. We didn't have enough money for medicine. We tried everything we could, but in the end, he passed away. That was the most painful time of my life. I cried endlessly and thought I would never be happy again." The young man listened attentively, his expression becoming more serious. The old woman continued, "Time passed and I realized something. Staying sad wouldn't bring my husband back. My children still needed their mother and I needed to keep living. That was when I began to change how I looked at life. I understood that life always brings both good and bad moments. And if we let the bad ones steal our joy, we'll stay trapped in sorrow forever." Still not fully convinced, the young man asked another question. "But how can you stay that optimistic every single day?" The old woman smiled gently and said, "Every morning when I wake up, I tell myself, today is a new day and I will find something to be happy about. Some days are easier than others, but there is always something small to be grateful for. Maybe the morning sunlight, a blooming flower by the porch, or simply bumping into an old friend." The young man nodded, but he still looked unsure. "What if something really terrible happens? How can you still be happy then?" The old woman replied slowly, "It's not easy, my dear, but I always remind myself, this too shall pass. When facing something negative, I try not to focus on what I've lost, but instead on what I still have. My health, my friends, and above all, my life. I believe happiness is a choice. You can choose to see the bad and be sad, or choose to see the good and smile. It's not always simple, but if you try, it is absolutely possible." After hearing her heartfelt story and wise words, the young man bowed his head in gratitude. He left her humble home with a heart lighter and full of hope. From that day forward, he decided to try living the way she had taught him, to look for one small positive thing each day, something to be thankful for, something to smile about. At first, it wasn't easy to change, but gradually, he noticed his mood improving. Life began to feel easier, even during hard times. He learned to keep a positive attitude and found joy in the little things, a smile, a kind greeting, or simply a quiet sense of peace. The old woman's story and her precious advice spread throughout the village. Many others began to live the way she had shown, not letting their circumstances define their happiness, but choosing joy by shifting their perspective. Slowly, the entire village became warmer and happier. Each person carried a piece of the old woman's wisdom and light in their hearts. The woman who had spent her life reminding others that happiness doesn't come from the outside world, but begins deep within each of us.